Hello, everyone. Sorry, we are 15 minutes late. But that is because Ankita and me, for the last 15 minutes, were in a heated debate. Ankita, shall I tell them what the debate was?
Yes, yeah.
Ankita was saying, Kerala PSC exam is descriptive. And I was saying, in Kerala PSC exam, even though it is descriptive paper, you still need to know MCQs. And we had such a big debate on this, guys. Whether MCQs impact descriptive writing. Ankita, finally, what is your conclusion? Tell them.
I think I feel finally convinced that yes, MCQs do impact it impacts your vocabulary. And that in consequence will affect the way you write your descriptive answers.
And it gives you points, information.
Yes.
It will give you the way to think because MCQ will be analytical. So, Ankita, do you think it is good to illustrate our idea that MCQs impact descriptive writing? We can illustrate this idea by taking an MCQ and then showing how you can develop it into a descriptive answer.
Yes, right, exactly.
Let us do it then.
Yeah.
I'm sure this will tremendously help our Kerala PSC aspirants as well as any assistant professor aspirants. All of them who have to write descriptive exams, they will be benefited by this session. Okay, so without much ado, let us move into this. Kerala PSC Assistant Professor, MCQs, impact descriptive writing, guys. Can you see my slide? No, you can't.
Yes, it is completely visible.
Not now. I mean, it shows that it is not sharing. I don't want to take any risks. People don't have time to waste. So I will not do the slideshow. That's all. Okay. Let us move into one question. Shall we, Ankita?
Yes, yeah.
Here is a question from Mansfield Park. Would you like to read it?
Yeah. So, which aspect of Mansfield Park most clearly exemplifies Austen's critique of the traditional novel of manners?
I
Is it
see.
the
So,
detailed?
Ankita, you're saying that Jane Austen was critiquing the traditional novel of manners.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Let us read the options, Ankita.
Yeah. So, how is she critiquing this traditional genre? Is it by the detailed description of English countryside landscapes? Is it by the contrast between social elegance and genuine moral virtue? Or is it by focusing on political reform in Regency England? Or through the emphasis on supernatural elements in aristocratic society?
Wow. Good options, Ankita. What do you think? What is the answer?
Here, since we are talking about critiquing of the traditional genre of novel of manners, here we also have to think in terms of the question. So here option B is talking about the behavior of the contemporary landed gentry of England in 19th century. So it is by the contrast, by showing the contrast between social elegance and genuine moral virtue of the characters in Mansfield Park, Austen critiqued the behavior, the customs, the moral values of the landed gentry of England in 19th century.
Excellent. So this is a very major point about the question, about the book. And if they are asking us to write about the book, you can put this question, put this point there and illustrate it with examples. Isn't it? So you know what I did, Ankita? I sat and wrote the points for a descriptive answer so that we can share it with us YouTube babies and Kerala assistant professor aspirants. Would you like to see that?
Yes, yeah.
Ankita is eager to see that. I'm sure YouTube babies, you're also eager. So here we go. The points are a little small, but it's okay. You can take a screenshot, guys. I put it all in one slide because you can read it properly. So critically examine Mansfield Park as a novel of manners. First, how do you write? You have to introduce the text. Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. Put the year. Briefly define the novel of manners. What is novel of manners? You should say. So Mansfield Park is a novel of manners. So you have to say, what is novel of manners? Novel of manners depicts customs, etiquette, social codes of a class. YouTubers, you can just take a screenshot and you can zoom in and read if you want. So novel of manners, did you understand everyone? Depiction of customs, etiquette, social codes of a class, social class. Then talk about the social context. As I always teach you, it is the Regency period. And who is depicted? The English landed gentry. And then in the end of the introduction, what should you say, Ankita? You should present the central argument
Yes.
or thesis. Can you read it,
Hmm.
Ankita? What is the central argument?
Yes. So here the central argument is that Jane Austen not only portrays manners, but she critically examines the moral foundations of polite society. She's
Ha.
critiquing the contemporary social structure. She's
Yeah.
critiquing the contemporary landed gentry.
That means she is not only describing mindlessly, she is
Hmm.
intellectually analyzing. Like our own students will analyze in their exams, because every exam is
Yes.
analytical these days.
Mhm.
Okay, so that is for the introduction. Then you move on to the representation of social. I can zoom in like this. Representation of social structure is what she does then. Explain how the novel depicts the social world of the English gentry, gives them examples. Mansfield Park Estate is a microcosm of aristocratic society, isn't it? And you talk
Hmm.
about the keywords, how the story of Fanny Price living in the house of the Bertrams bring in issues of authority, property, lineage, hierarchy. Ankita, this is an 8-mark question. Okay, long. It's an essay that we are discussing
Yes.
here.
Yes.
And then you can contrast between Mansfield and Portsmouth. What is Portsmouth? Do you know, guys? Mansfield Park is the rich house or the rich locality where the Bertrams live. Portsmouth is the poor locality where Fanny Price used to live. Fanny Price has
Hmm.
come from Portsmouth, and it is similar to, the condition how Charles Dickens lived and all that. So, how environment shapes manners and refinement. People who came from London are the most immoral people here. The people who are poor and living in a very small way, they are the most virtuous people here. So that is how she is showing, and introduce the critical idea that in Austen, manners are associated with morals. Okay, not like in the 18th century novel where reputation was one thing and virtue was another. Tom Jones and all had reputation, no reputation, but good virtue. Here, it is not like that. You have to have reputation. That means you will have good virtue. Then she is critiquing the superficiality of the society. Superficial manners she is questioning. She is questioning the idea that polite behavior is moral. She is questioning. Just because somebody is polite or gentle, does that mean they are actually moral? Mary and Henry Crawford are charming people from London, but they are morally unstable characters. And Jane Austen contrasts the Crawfords with Fanny Price. And Fanny Price lacks social polish, but she's genuinely moral. And Jane Austen also shows how you can also show how Jane Austen redefines true virtue. It is not enough if you have social elegance. For example, in Northanger Abbey also, Isabella Thorpe, John Thorpe, they are people with social elegance. That doesn't mean they are moral, they were immoral. So Jane Austen is showing the importance of social elegance coupled with morality, right? Now,
Hmm.
the Lovers' Vows episode is there in Mansfield Park. You can take one episode and explain it. For example, Elizabeth Inchbald's Lover's Vow is a book on adultery, and all the young people are enacting this play in the novel. And when Uncle Bertram comes, suddenly they stop the play. Isn't it, Ankita? Do you remember that scene?
Yes. Yes.
Ankita remembers. So, in this novel, amateur theatricals That means not professional actors, amateur people are acting. It symbolizes social performance. It's a metaphor for social performance. We are all like that, play acting, pretending. That is the meaning. Jane Austen uses play acting, riddles, etc., to reflect on social behavior. Okay. And she demonstrates the hypocrisy and frivolity of fashionable society. When Sir Bertram is absent, wow, Ankita, they're all very immoral. His authority, when he is there, everybody is acting like moral. So the absence of Sir Bertram's authority reveals moral instability. YouTubers, are you getting me? So you are here talking about the symbolic technique used by Jane Austen in introducing a play within the novel. So you can mention other narrative techniques also here. She uses irony and free indirect discourse. Remember, irony is there in Jane Austen. That is very important. Jane Austen critics later and talked a lot about this irony. And she also uses free indirect discourse. What is the meaning of free indirect discourse? Character speeches are intermixed with the narrator's speeches. That is the meaning. Finally, you conclude. You reaffirm that the novel follows the conventions of the novel of manners. So, in this question, in this answer, in this essay, Ankita, we got a very good point from the MCQ, which is that she's not only just describing manners and describing
Yes.
social class, but she is critiquing it through
Exactly.
irony,
Yes.
isn't it? So you are reaffirming that the novel follows the conventions of the novel of manners. But Austen also questions the ethical basis of these conventions. The conventions are there, but she's also questioning. That is why Jane Austen cult came later. Jane Austen is not a silly novelist. She's a prototypical feminist. So Mansfield Park becomes a serious moral and philosophical critique of social decorum and virtue. You should write an impactful last sentence, isn't it, Ankita? Because many
Yes.
times people will read only introduction and conclusion properly. So impactful last sentence. Wow. Here is a whole essay ready-made, guys. You two babies, Ankita and Kalyani, to sending you with a whole essay in points. Ankita, do you know what
Yes.
slide comes next? This entire essay we wrote, na? We wrote in detail.
Yes.
You remember? That is what
Yes.
is here. Next slide. Dekho. Ta-da-dang. Critically examine Mansfield Park as a novel of manners. Ankita, I will read some few sentences. You read a few sentences. Then I will read a few sentences. Like that, we'll read this. Because people who are visually impaired are watching our channel, using our channel. It'll be very helpful if we read it aloud.
Yes.
Jane Austen's Mansfield Park, year batana zarur, 1814, is widely regarded as one of the most complex examples of the novel of manners. Q complex Q? Why complex? Because it is critiquing the genre. Novel of manners, a genre that depicts the customs, values, and behavioral codes of a particular social class. Set within the Regency English landed gentry, the novel portrays a society governed by etiquette, propriety, class hierarchy, and marriage conventions. All these are there in the novel, isn't it, guys? However, Austen does not merely record social behavior. She is not only recording social behavior, then she is critically interrogating, isn't it? She critically interrogates the moral foundations underlying political society, thereby transforming the traditional novel of manners. Traditionally, novel of manners was like describe, 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 no critiquing. But here, she's developing it into a subtle moral and social critique. Wow, that's a powerful introduction that we have written, Ankita. Isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I will zoom in, and Ankita, you can read the second paragraph now.
Oh, yes. So after you write the intro, then we move to the next para, and it goes like this. At one level, this novel carefully represents the ritualized social structure of aristocratic life. So aristocratic life is the focus here. The Bertram estate at Mansfield Park functions as a microcosm of English gentry society, where authority, lineage, and property determine social order. So your standing in the society is determined by your authority, your property, your wealth. Through contrasts between Mansfield and Portsmouth, where Fanny Price lived in, Austen highlights the role of environment in shaping your refinement, discipline, and social decorum. The narrative thus reflects what critics describe as the close relationship between manners and morals in Austen's fiction, where behavior is often assumed to reflect inner virtue. So here, how you behave not only with others of your class, but also those who are lower than your class.
Excellent.
That reflects.
Yes. 2 more paragraphs are there, Ankita. Let us move on.
It is
3
assumed
more.
to reflect inner virtue.
Yeah. Yet, Austen complicates the assumption by exposing the gap between polished manners and genuine morality. So she is making it very complex. She is showing that polished manners and genuine morality are two different things. Characters like Mary and Henry Crawford possess wit, charm, and fashionable elegance, but their conduct ultimately reveals moral superficiality. Oh my God, they are immoral, ethical instability. So, Henry and Mary Crawford are charming people, but they are immoral. That is how it is depicted. In contrast, Fanny Price, though timid and socially awkward, embodies moral integrity, humility, and constancy. So, guys, when you write keywords and then flesh it out into a proper essay, you will learn to write in a dense manner. Okay? You don't just write whatever comes to your mind, but prepare points like we did and then write. Through this contrast, Jane Austen suggests that true virtue lies not in social polish, but in moral principle, thus defining the ethical basis of manners. So she is giving a very important idea here. So what is important is not just social polish, but moral principle. That is important. Jane Austen led the way to Charlotte Bronte and Emily Bronte in that sense. Okay, over to you, Ankita.
So here we talked about how that play was performed, right? So the Lovers' Vows theatrical episode here further dramatizes this critique. The amateur theatricals here symbolize social performance and moral masquerade, which exposes the frivolity and hypocrisy underlying fashionable society. The episode here illustrates how aristocratic decorum can easily collapse into impropriety and self indulgence, especially in the absence of moral authority, which is represented by Sir Thomas Bertram. Austen's use of irony and free indirect discourse subtly reveals the self deception of characters who mistake social charm for ethical worth.
Yeah. So in the exam hall, you may not be able to write such flourish, sentences with flourish. Doesn't matter. You have the keywords. The keywords are actually there in the MCQs. Okay, so you will be able to write like this. The theatrical episode of Lovers' Vows by Elizabeth Inchbald, Sir Thomas Bertram as the center of moral authority. What is important is, real value or worth or morality. And Austen uses irony and free indirect discourse. Therefore, while Mansfield Park conforms to the conventions of the novel of manners through its detailed portrayal of Regency social life, it simultaneously questions the moral legitimacy of those social codes. That's a very good academic sentence. Austen ultimately demonstrates that manners without moral substance are merely performance. Wow, that is a key sentence. Austen demonstrates that manners without moral substance are merely performance. And she's transforming the genre into a profound exploration of virtue, conscience, and social responsibility. And a powerful last sentence. In this sense, Mansfield Park stands as Austen's most serious and philosophically nuanced examination of the relationship between social decorum and moral truth. Dear friends, you can just, screenshot and read it clearly, and always write keywords and prepare answers like this. Okay, Ankita, let us quickly do one more.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can read.
So Virginia Woolf's use of stream of consciousness in Mrs. Dalloway primarily serves to what? So what is the function of this narrative technique in this novel? It depicts the fragmented psyche and subjective temporality characteristic of post-World War I modernity. Or
When
does
you
it
read a sentence like
reconstruct?
this, Ankita, I think they should look at the keywords again. Fragmented psyche, subjective temporality. Okay.
Or is it reconstructing the social realism typical of Victorian fiction? Or it presents an objective historical account of post-war London? Or is it reinforcing the moral certainties of Edwardian society? What is this narrative technique doing here? It is depicting the fragmented psyche and subjective temporality that was characteristic of post-World War I modernity.
Yeah. So, dear friends, when you write answers, even when you write simple sentences, sometimes use post-World War I modernity, then fragmented psyche, such phrases. These are all important phrases regarding a stream of consciousness. Subjective temporality, matlab kya hai? Subjective temporality means what? It means time is experienced in a subjective manner, isn't it? Time is experienced in a subjective manner. So it is very easy. When you find tough language and all, never get scared. Just read it once more. Look at the keywords and you will completely understand how to read it. Ankita, we have a big list of points here. Analyze how Virginia Woolf's use of stream of consciousness technique in Mrs. Dalloway articulates the fragmentation and pessimism of the post-World War I modernist milieu. So how do you write, guys? I'm not reading every point because I'm sure our YouTube babies know. How do you write? First, you have to introduce the text, then the movement, then the technique, then the context. All that should come in the introduction. And always at the end of the introductory paragraph, present the central thesis. Woolf uses stream of consciousness narration to represent psychological fragmentation and pessimism of the modern age. Then what do you move on to? You talk about modernist narration, how it is experimentation. Modernist narration is a rejection of linear realism, and it uses interior monologue, shifting focus. That means there is no fixed good and evil. There are no fixed centers. The focus is shifting. And temporal fluidity means what? Time is fluid. So, in the second paragraph, in the second part of the answer, you can show how fragmentation is used in modernism and how it reflects the society. Then you come to the novel. This is the main part of the essay. Character-based representation. You discuss the two major characters, Clarissa Dalloway and Septimus Warren Smith. You examine their parallel consciousness. You talk about how the party is being conducted, and Septimus is a shell-shocked veteran. He is with his wife Regia or Lucretia. He's experiencing trauma, hallucinations, PTSD, and psychological breakdown. Whereas Clarissa appears socially stable. She's like the counterfoil or the opposite character. Yet, she also experiences some of the confusions and turmoils of Septimus Warren Smith. Together, they reveal two dimensions of post-war pessimism. And in the party, when Clarissa comes to know about Septimus's death, she even feels guilty for that indirectly, because she and the society that she is part of send him to fight in the war for no reason. Okay, so that is the main thematic discussion, the third part of the essay. In the fourth part, you can talk more about the technique. You can talk about flashbacks, associative memories. These are all key words that you can remember in the context of stream of consciousness. So how do you study, guys, when you study Kerala assistant professor syllabus or any assistant professor syllabus for descriptive writing, even for UPSC, you should remember the keywords. The keywords will help you to quickly remember in the exam hall what you have to write, right? That is a very good technique. And you should prepare the keywords and from there get practice writing. So you can talk about how the chronological storytelling is disrupted. There is a mosaic of consciousness. All these words you may not remember in the exam. But if you study like 25 words, you will remember at least 15. And also if you practice writing at home, you will be able to write better and better. Do you agree, Ankita?
Yes, absolutely. And
Yeah,
the
Ankita
more you
agrees.
understand these concepts, and you will remember this automatically. These
Right.
words, phrases.
Ankita has experience. She has been writing many exams and papers. Now we come to the conclusion. We have to reassert that stream of consciousness is not merely a stylistic technique. It is a formal representation of the fractured modern consciousness. It is not just a technique, it is also related to form. So, how do you write the last sentence? You can say Wolf transforms narrative form into a symbol of post war fragmentation and cultural pessimism. Okay, like the earlier answer, we have written the answer here also, but I think it will be unnecessary to expand on this. Some people might want to take a screenshot, or do you think we should quickly read because of the people who
Uh,
are visually impaired and all that?
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, well, let's read. Guys, if you don't
Yeah.
want to listen to us, you can leave the video, that's all. But we are going to read in case one person is out there who benefits from our reading. So this question is about Virginia Woolf's use of stream of consciousness technique in Mrs. Dalloway, 1925. Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway exemplifies high modernist narrative experimentation, where the stream of consciousness technique becomes a formal strategy to represent the psychological fragmentation and cultural disillusionment of the post-World War I era. What are we depicting here? The psychological fragmentation and the cultural disillusionment of the post-World War I era. Rejecting linear Victorian realism. No. We don't want linear Victorian realism. Woolf constructs the narrative through interior monologue, shifting focalization or shifting focus or shifting points of view, temporal fluidity, thereby mirroring the dislocated consciousness of modern individuals. Modern individuals are not very happy with themselves. This is also the post-Freudian world. Remember, post-Freudian world. Critics observe that modernist fiction adopts fragmented narrative structures to reflect a society shattered by war and loss. Critics observe that modernist fiction adopts fragmented narrative structures to reflect a society shattered by war and loss. The juxtaposition of Clarissa Dalloway's reflective consciousness with Septimus Warren Smith, his traumatized psyche, embodies the dual registers of post-war pessimism, the two ways in which post-war pessimism works. One works in the style of Clarissa, the other works in the style of Septimus. From here, read, Ankita.
Septimus, a shell-shocked veteran, represents the pathological aftermath of war, where memory intrusions, hallucinations, and fractured perception dramatize the collapse of coherent identity. So there is a collapse of identity of self. And his stream-like mental flow exposes the trauma-induced disintegration of selfhood, symbolizing the broader crisis of modern civilization. Meanwhile, Clarissa's apparently mundane reflections reveal existential anxiety, alienation, and the ephemerality or transience of life, suggesting the spiritual exhaustion of post-war bourgeoisie society. So how
Right.
war is experienced by two different individuals in two different ways, yet how both the experiences are so valid.
So in here, you are getting keywords. You're also getting some structures to write. Formally, Wolf's non-linear temporality. Non-linear temporality means she writes in a non-linear manner. Time is presented in a non-linear or non-chronological manner. How is it presented? Time marked by flashbacks, associative memories, and momentary impressions. That style dismantles chronological narration and replaces it with a fragmented mosaic of consciousness. That's a beautiful word, thereby embodying the modernist belief that reality is subjective and discontinuous. The modernist belief is that reality is subjective, discontinuous. Consequently, the stream of consciousness method does not merely depict thought, it aestheticizes the fractured psyche of a post-war generation. So it is the aesthetics of a post-war generation. It is the aesthetics of a fractured psyche, transforming narrative form into a structural analog. Analog means metaphor or counterpart of modern fragmentation and cultural pessimism. The only way to get many, many, many more marks, Ankita, is to write keywords.
Yes.
If you write more and more keywords in your answer, you will definitely get more marks. And your sentences should be right. It doesn't matter if they are very complicated or not. You can write simple sentences, no problem. They should be correct. Otherwise, they can reduce marks for grammar. Simple sentences, correct sentences, and full of keywords. That is the formula for very good marks in a descriptive exam. Do you agree?
Yes. You know, this novel, Mrs. Dalloway, always reminds me of the painting Guernica of Picasso. And that same chaos, fragmentation, disillusionment, and the mosaics of consciousness, this very phrase, it always echoes with Guernica of Picasso. You know, the movement of Cubism that was spearheaded by Picasso. You know, how the same situation is echoed or shown from various angles, and how how the same situation appears different from different perspectives, like
Correct.
Akira Kurosawa even did with his movies. So yeah, it's a very wonderful thing actually.
That's so beautiful. So I think we have done a good job with the Kerala Assistant Professor exam. And next week, we are going to start with the MPPAC exam, I think. Right. So, my dear friends, stay tuned. Join us every day, every evening, Monday to Friday at 9 p.m. If I don't come at 9 p.m., wait till 9:15 like today. We'll have a lot of meaningful discussions. Okay, thank you very much and good night from Ankita and Kalyani.